Hello, I'm Peter Van Dusen, and this is Primetime Politics on CPAC, the campaign edition. It is day 19 of the campaign, Election Day, September 20th. A quieter day on the campaign trail today as leaders prepared for the first televised debate of the campaign, the French language debate on TVA. The debate comes at the halfway point of the campaign, roughly, and it could be very important to the election outcome. More on that coming up with our party commentators. And we will also look at the importance of the debate with PJ Fournier of electoral projection site 338 Canada. Also ahead, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities issues its priority list for the election, including a demand for billions of dollars in federal funding to deal with the effects of climate change. But first, to the day on the campaign trail.
Wow, take it out, Doug.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh met reporters at a custom poutine truck featuring his own personal recipe. It was just hours ahead of the first big test of the campaign, the face-to-face French language debate on TVA. For Singh, it will be a key opportunity to try and revive party fortunes in Quebec, but he'll face more questions about his stand against Quebec's Bill 21 on religious symbols in the workplace. Singh made it clear who his target will be in the debate tonight.
I'm looking forward to presenting our plan to Quebecers and let folks know about what our plan is. And when we've seen what Justin Trudeau's done, Canadians, Quebecers can't afford another 4 years of Justin Trudeau. He has made things worse, particularly the things that people care about the most in Quebec.
This debate has proven pivotal before. In the last campaign, then Conservative leader Andrew Scheer evaded questions on abortion and medical assistance in dying. His performance in the debate was widely seen as hurting the Conservative campaign. The current Conservative leader, Erin O'Toole, is leading in many polls. He's already promised a contract with Quebec. He can expect to face lots of attacks from opponents on his proposals on climate change, health care, and social issues. In a tweeted video ahead of the debate, O'Toole promised to protect the French language everywhere in Canada.
C'est qu'elle grandisse dans un monde sain, en français, en sécurité, en santé.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau was joined by Montreal area candidates for a pre-debate stroll in Montreal, meeting supporters and pausing for pictures and a smoked meat lunch. Trudeau will look to make the debate a choice for Quebecers between the Liberals and the Bloc Québécois, by arguing that only a party that can form government can truly serve Quebecers. While it's a French language debate with a huge audience in Quebec, the reviews of the performances are important in English Canada too. So expect Trudeau to go after Erin O'Toole as well over health care and values, and expect all leaders to gang up on Trudeau over any number of issues. 2 years ago, the Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet was a newcomer on the federal political scene, but he performed so well in this debate, he revived the fortunes of the Bloc and likely blocked a Liberal majority. Blanchet gave a glimpse of the case he will make to Quebecers.
Presenting directly to the population, that is the most important part of it. What we propose, what we think, what we carry as values. So I will be very happy to step on the plateau.
People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier was not invited to the TVA debate, and neither was Green Party leader Annamie Paul. Paul remained in Toronto today, where she pressed for more Canadian action to deal with the crisis in Afghanistan. And that's the kind of day it's been, day 19 of the election campaign. Well, let's bring in our panel of party commentators now to talk about the debate and where we are in the campaign. Susan Smith is a Liberal commentator, Kate Harrison's a Conservative commentator, and Kim Wright is an NDP commentator. It's great to see you all again. Susan, let's talk about the debate tonight. It's the first debate of the campaign. It's in French, but it is important across the country, as we've seen in the past. What's the challenge tonight for Justin Trudeau?
The big challenge for Trudeau is all eyes will be trained on Trudeau. And so he will be getting it from all sides. The other challenge is, quite frankly, is that this will be the first time a lot of the country and certainly most of Quebec has seen Erin O'Toole on his feet. And they're going to kind of like him, just from a general presentation perspective. The question is, how well will they like his policies and how well can they defend them? So Trudeau's big challenge will be to differentiate himself from O'Toole, to really create a stark contrast, to talk about childcare, to talk about climate change, to talk about vaccinations, to talk about the plan for the country, to an audience that is familiar with him and who will be meeting Erin O'Toole for the first time.
All right. Kate Harrison, Erin O'Toole is leading in a lot of the polls these days, so he can expect to get a lot more scrutiny for his policies. His French is improving, but let's face it, he's less fluent perhaps than the others. What's the big challenge for him tonight?
Yeah, I think the fighting to a draw would be a good night for Erin O'Toole. We saw what happened in the last campaign with Andrew Scheer. The TVA debate tripped him up quite a bit, and he really got cornered on some social issues that have been sticky for Conservative leaders in the past. I would expect a lot of those same questions to come forward in this debate tonight. But Erin O'Toole so far has managed those questions very well. Obviously, he has different personal beliefs than the previous leader, ones that Quebecers may be more comfortable with themselves. So I do think that for him, just trying to kind of keep his head above water is a key. I think the dynamics between Blanchet and Trudeau are really going to be the fireworks, if there are to be any tonight.
Yeah, we'll get into some of that. Kim Wright, Jagmeet Singh is trying to build on the party's single seat in Quebec, but we know the challenges he faces in Quebec. He was asked about that again today, his criticism of Bill 21, his attacks on the Bloc and the Bloc attacks on him. What's the big challenge for Jagmeet Singh tonight?
It is continuing to put that positive message, that optimism, that what he has done for Canadians throughout the pandemic and throughout the past 2 years in Parliament. He was given an opportunity over the last couple of years to show when you elect more New Democrats, that you get better programs, better policies, increased CERB, and that what he's looking forward to doing for Canadians as Prime Minister. Look, the reality is that the other leaders on the stage, in particular Mr. Blanchet and Mr. Trudeau, have been a bit thin-skinned this election campaign. They've been snarky at reporters. They've been snarky all over the place. And, then Mr. Blanchet in his dismissive pose at a press conference earlier today, the reality is they need to show that they want the job. Certainly Jagmeet Singh wants the job. He's got amazing candidates in Quebec. You've got Ruth Ellen Brasseur coming back, Yves Paclet and Outremont. Of course, Alexandre Bouliras is amazing, and showing what you can do when you have good people and you vote for the government you want, not the one you're afraid you get afraid of voting in.
Susan, let me talk about, let's go back to Justin Trudeau and some of the things he might face tonight. I expect we'll hear questions for all of the candidates on the issues of on the issue of health care and provincial versus federal jurisdiction. That's a big issue in the province of Quebec and other provinces as well. Justin Trudeau's talked a lot about extra money for health care for the provinces, but there are going to be some strings attached. How does he navigate that tonight?
Well, I think he can because he's already walked the talk. In terms of the $10 a day childcare, Canada signed a deal. The government of Canada signed a deal with 8 of the provinces and territories, including Quebec, that already has its own daycare program. And they made a deal with Quebec. They said, here's more money towards the program you have, no strings attached onto that. So the government has walked the talk. Trudeau has walked the talk. He's a son of Quebec, just like he's a son of BC, as he likes to tell people. He understands Quebecers. He is a Quebecer. So I think he will be able to navigate that. The one thing, too, he can say for Quebecers is Yves Blanchet can never be Prime Minister. Yves Blanchet can never form a cabinet. Yves Blanchet will never make a decision about what's good for Quebec and what's good for Canada. And I think Quebecers fundamentally care, of course, about what happens to them at home, but they also care about their impact in Canada and globally. Climate change, for example, huge issue in Quebec, is not a Quebec story alone. So this is where Trudeau will paint a stark difference there between himself and the other leaders.
Kate, you touched on the problems for Andrew Scheer and that were caused by his performance in the TVA debate. It kind of sucked the momentum out of the campaign in 2019. But Erin O'Toole will face, again, some of those same value questions tonight. You've touched on how he might do a better job just because of his positions on them than Mr. Scheer. But he'll get pressed about his climate plan and sticking to the old Paris targets. And that's a big deal in Quebec. So how does he deal with that for a Quebec audience to show that, notwithstanding the fact he's talked about a contract for Quebec, that he's actually aligned with their views?
Yeah, I think on climate in particular, he's going to have to talk about how you're going to set targets. It's important to meet them. The previous government didn't even do that. So rather than set kind of this moonshot target, even when you haven't met what's been set previously, that's kind of pie in the sky thinking. So I think that on climate, on social issues, including on healthcare, there was a lot more potential for Aaron O'Toole to connect with Quebecers based on what's in his platform than what Andrew Scheer had offered, frankly, in 2019. Aaron O'Toole also was, during the leadership race, was very, very focused on Quebec issues. A lot of those kind of Quebec-specific policies were carried over to this new platform. So I think that he is on good footing because of some of the ideas that he's put forward. There will be definitely tricky questions, but he's handled some of those much better so far than previous leaders. And so I think that he's in a good position tonight.
Kim Wright, Jagmeet Singh's talked about this message of optimism and cheery optimism. He talked about it again today. But the fact of the matter is he runs into problems with the province of Quebec on some of the things that the people in the province of Quebec think are important. Again, Bill 21 and provincial jurisdiction and those kinds of things. So he'll have that sunny way about him probably tonight in the debate. But how does he get past the fact that on a lot of those key issues he's just not aligned with the people of Quebec?
Well, look, if you're talking about Bill 21 and the fact that Jagmeet Singh wears a turban, I think he's talked about that. I think he's addressed that. But I also think that Canadians also have seen who he is, what his value proposition is. He just put out this great series of ads and the story behind Jagmeet Singh. The kid who got bullied for wearing a turban, the kid who got bullied for being a bit different, not being able to see himself in politics, and then being able to make big changes for people, whether it's been showing them how law and politics actually matters in their lives and can help make their lives better. Those are the kinds of things that Canadians are looking for. It isn't just sunny ways and hollow promises. It's actually a guy who has walked the walk and talked the talk. Aaron O'Toole is going to have a problem on that stage because he wants to show that he is the son of a guy who worked at GM, management at GM, but a guy who worked at GM. But Aaron O'Toole also has a caucus that does not share his value proposition. Aaron O'Toole also has a very deep record of not bringing forward private members' bills that helps pensioners. So, talk is cheap, frankly. It's about leadership, and that's what Jagmeet Singh has shown.
Okay, let's talk about, in more general terms, where we are in the campaign. Susan, let me start with you here. Why is Aaron O'Toole rising in the polls?
Because nobody knew him. That's why. He's rising because for the last year and a bit, people have been watching the Prime Minister help them through the pandemic, and there wasn't a lot of camera time on the other opposition leaders. They're seeing O'Toole. On the surface, he's a reasonable, decent guy. The issue is the policies and when the deep digging is happening. I'll get that out. So I think that's part of it. But I think what you're going to see, I also think the other thing is people aren't focused a whole lot on this yet. It's the surface. Yeah, he looks all right. I'd have a beer with that guy. After Labor Day, all of the platforms are out now. The Liberals platform is costed. The Tories and the NDPs are not costed. This is when the knuckling down is going to be going. This is when the surface scratching is going to take place. And I think this is where you'll see some more fluctuations in the polls.
All right. Kate, let me get your view on what you think is happening. Why is Aaron O'Toole up and why is Justin Trudeau down a little bit?
I think if people weren't paying attention, then we wouldn't be seeing any difference in the polls than what happened before. So I think, in fact, people are paying quite a bit of attention. They're annoyed that this election is happening at all. And they're genuinely casting about to see, okay, who's got the best plan and ideas to move the country forward after the pandemic is said and done. I really do think that the Liberals have rested a bit too much on their pandemic management and not so much on the ideas and the vision coming out of the pandemic. People are trying to move on to that portion of the conversation. And so I think that Aaron's policy coming out with that early really gave him a head start in the campaign, and people are starting to get interested in talking about what Conservatives can do.
All right, Kim Wright, we'll finish with you tonight. Jagmeet Singh's rising as well in his personal popularity. A bit of a bump in the polls as well. The party numbers, at least for the most part, steady or nudging upwards somewhat. But how does Jagmeet Singh convert a growing personal popularity into a growing number of seats?
Well, and you're starting to see that. And when you Democrats start hitting that 23, 24% in nationwide polls, that translates into seats and shifts in how that unfolds because of the way that our vote is much more efficient. But the reason that Jagmeet Singh, people are giving a good look at him, and even to an extent to Mr. OToole, is that Justin Trudeau has a credibility gap. He wants to say that, he didn't get to accomplish certain things because of the pandemic. You had years of a majority government before that. You've been elected since 2015. So we still don't have clean drinking water. There are still children that are in reserves who are being taken to court by the Prime Minister, but also that they still don't have access to clean drinking water. Sure, maybe progress is done, but in 2021, we don't have these things. He also has a big credibility gap with women. He wanted to be the feminist Prime Minister and super woke, and yet he's got a candidate who's got multiple sexual assault allegations and human rights complaints, and he didn't get rid of him. Those kinds of credibility gaps are coming home to roost, not only for Canadians, but also for Liberals.
All right. Still like halfway point. So lots more time to watch what happens next, but focus on the debate tonight. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Philippe J. Fournier is the man behind the website 338 Canada, a statistical model of electoral projections based on opinion polls, demographics, and electoral history. He's a professor at the Cégep de Saint-Laurent in Montreal, and he's with me now. Monsieur Fournier, good to see you again. Thanks for taking time to speak with me today.
Bonjour, Peter. Always a pleasure.
Good. Nice to see you too. Let's talk about the TVA debate tonight. Why is this debate so important?
Well, sometimes it's true that in Canadian politics, we have seen debates that have been duds. But however, we have to remember in 2019, the TVA debate completely changed the race in Quebec. There was a second place deadlock between the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois. And in that debate, at the TVA debate, we saw Andrew Scheer completely stumble in the first few minutes of the debate. And Yves-François Blanchet's campaign took off at that point. And the polls did see this. We can see the lines completely changing directions right after that debate. And the Bloc Québécois went from about 19 to 20% in support and ended up with 33% in Quebec. And so this could be a major, major event tonight if OToole can keep his own.
And one of the things to consider, right, is that it's a French language debate, largely for a Quebec audience, and it's a big audience that TVA has for this debate. But but people in the rest of the country pay attention too, right? They hear the reviews, they hear how the leaders performed, and it can it can have an impact across the country.
Absolutely. And it can also give some momentum to the campaign. Whoever performs well in this campaign will go into next week's official debates by the Commission with some momentum. And so, of course, we will watch with attention tonight. We do not expect usually to see knockout punches. But then again, in 2019, we saw one, and Andrew Scheer stumbled big time.
Which leader or leaders have the most at stake in this debate? What will you be watching for tonight?
Well, interestingly, we see that the Liberals are still doing very well in Quebec. They're still leading the Bloc Québécois by a margin of about 6 to 7 points on average. And so, of course, Trudeau will need a good performance in Quebec if he wants to stay in power in Ottawa after this election. The Bloc Québécois has not been polling well lately. François Blanchet has had a difficult start to this campaign. The average of polling is somewhere between 25 and 28%, which is good for second place, but still a long way back by the Liberals. And also, if we look at the Conservatives, well, they had 16% of the vote in 2019. Right now, the average Conservatives is 19%. So it's a slight increase. And some polls, including from Léger this week, have the Conservative above 20% in Quebec. And that could really complicate the race for both Justin Trudeau and Yves-François Blanchet if OToole can hold his own tonight in the debate.
Yeah, and I think that's a key for, and the reason I wanted to talk to you today is because understanding what the models say and understanding the poll projections and so on can really help because the parties do their own polling too. They know what's going on out there. So it can really sort of help inform the viewer as to what to watch for, right? So we'll see a lot of people going after each other tonight, not just one leader picking on another leader, because of these numbers suggest to us that it might be getting more competitive in Quebec, and we'll see lots of people trading attacks, right?
All these three leaders cannot afford to play defense if they want to win, to increase their seat count in the province. Justin Trudeau and François Blanchet and OToole all have high hopes for Quebec. Of course, we didn't talk much about Jagmeet Singh. His Quebec numbers are not very good at the moment. They're not down compared to 2019, but you're still looking at maybe one, perhaps two NDP seats in Quebec. So I think it will be a good practice for next week for the commission debates for Jagmeet Singh.
Let's talk about the national campaign and the polls showing the Conservatives on the rise and the Liberal support sliding in key regions. What effect has that had on your projections? Let's start in Ontario. What are you seeing?
In the first days of the campaign, I had the Liberals 95% of my simulations. And so even though the majority was far from a lock, a Liberal victory was the most likely scenario. However, in the days, actually starting from day 2 in the campaign, we saw the Liberals started slipping about everywhere in the country, but especially in Ontario. And for the past 2 weeks in the projections, the Liberals have on average lost 2 seats per day. And so it's been a very terrible start for Justin Trudeau in this campaign. However, today is Thursday, and so we see the numbers seem to have stabilized this week. And so we have a statistical tie between the Liberals and the Conservatives. Right now in Ontario, there's some disagreement among polls. There's some polls that show the Liberals ahead by 2-3 points. Others say the Conservatives by a handful of points. That tells me that it's really close to being tied in a province. And if that is so, the projections show that at least 20 to 25 seats could go from red to blue if that materializes on voting day. That's why right now the seat projection shows a dead heat between the Conservatives and the Liberals.
All right, let's finish in what's happening in British Columbia. What are you seeing there?
Very strange numbers in British Columbia, but that is also very the normal state of the race. And we have very differing polls in British Columbia. Some polls say the Conservatives are above 40%, which of course they would record gains, seat gains, if that is true. But we also see the NDP in a strong second place in many polls. And so right now, the average in BC, I have 33% for the Conservatives, 30% for the NDP, and the Liberals are in third place with 26%. So it's a very close race. And of course, many seats are up for grabs, especially in the lower mainland and around Vancouver. We'll have to keep our eyes on that.
All right, Philippe J. Fournier, lots to watch for tonight, lots to watch for in the days ahead. Hope we get a chance to talk again during the campaign, but thanks for your time today and take care.
Thank you, Peter. Talk to you soon.
Well, Canada's cities and municipalities have presented their list of funding priorities to the political parties to deal with job creation, housing, transit costs, climate change. They say they need more money and recognition from the next federal government to help drive the economic recovery after the pandemic. Joanne Vanderheyden is the president of the Federation of Municipalities. She's the mayor of the municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc in Ontario. She's with me now. Mayor Vanderheyden, good to see you. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Look, political leaders are making lots of promises during this campaign to spend billions on priorities. Have you heard what you need to hear about support for cities and municipalities yet? And if not, what's missing?
Well, we've heard a lot. We're going through all of the platforms, obviously, in order to see what's there and what's not. And this morning we released our program, the Frontline Solutions for Canadian Recovery, and that's the election 2021 recommendations from municipalities. So we're going through all of the documents, obviously, to make sure that what we need is in there, because recovery is going to happen on the front lines, and I really, truly believe that.
All right, let's talk about transit. The federal government's already pledged to spend, I think it's $15 billion on transit over the next 8 years. There's a call for more money for local transit systems because of the losses in revenue during the pandemic because of lower ridership. So what is it specifically you want from the federal government on transit?
Well, on the transit piece, we really need to help move the recovery forward. I can tell you that cities across this country have lost incredible amount of money because of the COVID. So we need to move past this COVID, and the way to do that is to get the ridership back up, but to help municipalities with the costs that they've lost throughout. And I can give you an example. Mayor Savage said this morning, in Halifax alone, they lose $2 to $4 million a month. And so those shortfalls, of course, have to be carried and have to be moved forward. So how do we get through that? And we expect that the return to ridership will be between 75 to 85% of normal ridership within about 12 to 18 months. So FCM is calling for a durable solution to remaining transit operating shortfalls and predict that over the next number of years, say 2022 to 2024, in order to partnership across the spectrum to make sure that we can drive the inclusive economic recovery through transit.
Okay, let's talk about housing. All of the major parties have plans to develop more housing and more affordable housing and more rental options. What specifically do you want from the next government when it comes to housing?
Well, we're looking for clear and measurable timelines. We're also looking to grow the proven rapid housing initiative. This works. This is something that we can prove works, and so we need to commit an additional $5.5 billion over the next 5 years to create at least 18,000 more supportive housing and deeply affordable homes. And we're also looking for doubling the Reaching Home program, and those are the wraparound services that help all of the residents to move forward.
Right.
And that's just part of it. It's a very complex issue, and there's a lot to it. I really encourage people to go to our platform, to our website, and read the entire document.
Right. Housing is complex, and one of the things that makes it complex is federal parties can promise lots of money, but one of the challenges is zoning. For instance, those are all municipal decisions on what gets built where, and I guess. Are municipalities committed to easing perhaps some zoning restrictions to allow for more affordable housing in those communities?
They absolutely are. Yes. Sorry, they absolutely are. We're seeing it with even in my own community. We're changing zoning and we're changing things to allow different parcels to be developed in order to add more affordable housing and different options. So I see it across the board. That's working.
You've also made climate change a priority, as have the political parties, and municipalities are on the front lines of that challenge, as we know, because of the effects of climate change and how that can impact municipalities, flooding and so on. What do you want from the next federal government in terms of helping municipalities on the front line deal with the effects of climate change?
Climate change is being recognized by everyone, and it's happening. It's an urgent need. I mean, we're seeing it across Canada right now with the fires and with the droughts and with everything moving forward. And so we're looking for unprecedented investments of $2 billion over a 3-year recovery, following that by $1 billion a year to hit the climate resiliency and disaster mitigation projects. And we also need to invest in low carbon infrastructure like transit and local pathways to net zero. So again, another very complex issue, but I think we can do it together if we work hard.
These priorities that your organization has laid out, they call for billions in additional funding. And I guess a lot of people watch and go, Mayor, where's the money going to come from?
They're very, very ambitious. And let's not forget the permanent doubling of the Canada Community Building Fund. We want that to go to $4.6 billion and a permanent federal funding of $3 billion annually for the public transit. So those two pieces are really integral as well. And they work. We are seeing shovels in the ground and projects work. So I look at it as we're talking about renewing core infrastructure, building modern transit, tackling the housing issue crisis, protecting people from climate changes and extremes. These are just not nice to haves. These are have to haves. These are essential for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. Look at it as an investment, economic recovery, and it generates growth. And it's very ambitious, but I think we can get this done together with our partners at the federal level and the provincial level and the territorial level.
All right, Mayor Vanderheyden, thanks so much for your time today. We'll see how these requests you're making, these urgent requests you're making, how they play out, not just for the rest of the campaign, but what we hear from whoever forms government after the election ends. Thank you so much for your time today. Take care.
Thank you. And that's when the hard work begins, after the election.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time we have for this campaign edition of Primetime Politics on CPAC. I'm Peter Van Dusen. From all of us here at CPAC, thanks for watching.